Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're trying to get a handle on some of the stranger corners of the crypto world, well, you're in the right place. Today, we are really digging into the sources on the Pi network. It's a project that's quite different from most others out there. Yeah, totally built around this mobile-first idea, zero energy cost, basically. And somehow, they've built up this massive global presence that honestly a lot of established blockchains can't even match. So our mission today is simple: unpack the sources. We want to look at two big things happening with Pi right now. First, just how huge its global expansion is, and second, this major tech upgrade they're calling Protocol version 23.
Right, and it's really a deep dive into this tension, I think. You've got this idea of making things super accessible, super simple, right? Founded by Stanford PhDs, scaled out to over 200 countries, all based on just clicking a button on your phone once a day. So what happens when you try to bolt on, really advanced, pretty complex DeFi features onto that? It kind of forces you to ask, is it actually possible to bring these complex decentralized finance tools to millions of people who might be, totally new to this stuff all over the world? Or is this jump maybe just a bit too ambitious? That's really the core of what we're looking at today, that kind of duality.
I like that framing. Yeah, that conflict simplicity crashing into sophistication. That's exactly what our sources seem to be highlighting. So let's kick off with that first piece, the scale. The global reach is just astonishing. Okay, let's unpack this core identity then. Pi Network, it's designed from the ground up to just remove those huge barriers you see in normal crypto, right? The sources describe it as easy and ecological. That's the phrase they use. An easy way to get involved with digital currency.
Yeah, and just to give you some perspective here, think about, say, Bitcoin mining. You need specialized computers. ASICs often cost thousands. It eats electricity like crazy. And setting it up isn't exactly straightforward. It's like a serious, expensive hobby or business. Pi just flips that totally on its head. The sources confirm it's like incredibly simple. Download an app, open it once a day, press one button. That starts your mining session for 24 hours. No special hardware, barely touches your phone battery. Removing that technical hurdle and the cost hurdle, that's really the key to how they've grown so fast. It's their secret sauce, you could say.
And the result. That's what really makes Pi stand out, I think. Our materials show this pioneer community, their users, are now in over 200 countries and regions globally. That accessibility, according to our research, it's created one of the most geographically spread out and active blockchain communities anywhere.
And that scale isn't just an accident. It's tied directly into how the network grows. It's not just mobile, it's also social. Users get a boost in their mining speed if they invite others, build their network through referrals. So the community isn't just like using the network, they're actively building and spreading it.
So, okay, you've got this network, massive reach, especially hitting places where maybe traditional banking isn't easy to access or people don't have high-end computers. They've got the people. But just having people isn't enough, right? For it to be useful, it can't stay just a click and mine thing forever.
Exactly. That's the challenge. How do you validate that huge community? How do you give them real value beyond just watching a number go up in an app? And that brings us right to the next big thing highlighted in the sources, the tech upgrade.
Right. Protocol version 23, V23. And this isn't just like a small tweak, it's that fundamental shift we were talking about. The whole point of V23, as the sources describe it, is to bring native support for smart contracts onto their testnet, which, takes it way beyond just sending Pi coins back and forth.
Yeah, it basically moves Pi from just being a system for transactions into a platform for applications, a full application layer. Because when we talk about smart contracts, we're talking about code that runs itself, the building blocks for basically every decentralized app, every dApp out there. You absolutely need that functionality if you want to build a real Web3 ecosystem on top of Pi. It's non-negotiable.
And looking at how they're rolling it out, the path described in the sources, it seems really systematic, but also deliberately slow, maybe? They follow this path, testnet 1, then testnet 2, and only after all that testing, they'll move to the mainnet. Yeah. Why take it so slow? Why that methodical approach?
Well, it goes back to the scale we just talked about, right? They're building for potentially millions of users across 200 countries. If there's a bug, say, or a security hole in how the smart contracts work, the damage isn't limited to just a few techie users. It could affect millions of pioneers worldwide, many of whom might be less experienced. So the sources really emphasize this. The Pi core team is laser-focused on stability and security. They're testing every single part, every upgrade, every function, like with extreme care before they even think about the next step. That careful approach directly explains the slower timeline that sometimes frustrates the community. It's just the price you pay for trying to build something truly decentralized and secure for such a massive audience.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the bigger the ship, the more careful you have to be steering it. But here's where it gets really interesting, especially for people following DeFi. What specific features, what complex DeFi tools are actually being built and tested on V23 right now? Well, our sources get specific here. They say advanced DeFi functions are already running on the testnet. This isn't just theory. They're talking about a working decentralized exchange, a DX, that lets users trade directly with each other, peer-to-peer, no middleman.
And crucially, they're also testing AMM liquidity pools, automated market maker pools. Now, that's the really sophisticated engine behind most efficient decentralized trading. It involves users locking up their assets to provide the liquidity needed for trades. And as if that wasn't enough complexity, V23 also apparently includes token creation tools, so users could actually define and launch their own custom tokens on the Pi network.
Whoa, okay. Token creation tools, that really changes the game, doesn't it? Makes Pi not just about the Pi coin, but potentially a whole ecosystem of different assets. But let's stick with those AMM pools for a second. This seems like where that tension you mentioned earlier really comes to a head. I mean, how does a platform that sold itself on simplicity, where the hardest thing you do is remember to tap a button, how do they explain the risks involved in providing liquidity? Things like impermanent loss. How do you explain that to potentially millions of users who might be completely new to crypto concept?
That's the absolute core challenge, you're right. And the sources don't really ignore it. To make a DX and AMM tools work for this audience, Pi has to build incredibly simple, really accessible educational materials and user interfaces. Interfaces that kind of hide the complexity underneath, but still manage to communicate the real financial risks involved. Impermanent loss, for instance, it's notoriously hard to grasp, even for people who trade DeFi all the time. So imagine a pioneer, maybe somewhere in rural Vietnam, totally new to digital money. They see a potentially high reward for putting their Pi into a pool. They do it, and then they lose value because the market moved. That could seriously damage trust, right? Undermine the whole idea of financial inclusion they're aiming for. So yeah, building V23 technically is one thing. Getting mass adoption and managing risk education, that's the really huge hurdle.
Wow. So it sounds like the tech challenge is almost easier than the teaching challenge, the pedagogical challenge, as you put it. Okay, let's turn to the timeline. This always gets the community buzzing. What are the sources estimating for when this full V23 functionality might actually hit the mainnet?
Well, there's a bit of a divide here, you see. Community analysis, some media reports, they're throwing out estimates. Generally points towards, say, the end of Q4 2025, maybe spilling into early Q1 2026 for the full mainnet launch of V23. But, and this is really important to stress, these are community estimates. They're based on watching the current testing speed. They are absolutely not official dates from the Pi core team. That distinction matters because historically, the core team has always prioritized that careful security-first approach we discussed. They'll choose a secure, stable product over hitting some arbitrary date. If testing shows problems, they'll delay. That's their philosophy.
Right, okay. Safety first, speed second. Got it. Now let's circle back to the foundation of all this. The community itself. Because they're not just sitting back mining, are they? Even while the core developers are wrestling with AMM math and smart contract bugs, the community is apparently quite active, involved in testing network validation, testing governance ideas. They're kind of the human layer supporting the tech layer.
Exactly. And that human layer, that infrastructure, leads us to some pretty strict requirements for actually participating fully, which the sources detail. Getting started is easy, right? Download the app, get an invitation code. But becoming a fully validated pioneer, that path is actually quite rigorous. After you've done 30 mining sessions, users have to go through a Know Your Customer process, KYC. And that step is really essential for a network that's trying to link real-world identities to this huge global user base.
Yeah.
Especially before they unleash financial tools like DXs and AMMs. You need to know who's using them.
But here's a detail from the sources that really jumped out at me. It says a lot about how they view governance, I think. It's this rule about registration. Users must sign up using their actual real name. And the penalty if you don't, it's pretty steep.
Yeah, our sources clearly state that if you register incorrectly, basically if you don't use your real name, you face a huge penalty, a 20% loss of all the Pi you've accumulated. That seems, well, almost counterintuitive for getting lots of users on board, doesn't it? Why be so harsh? What's the thinking there? It's a really interesting kind of novel approach to governance, isn't it? It's designed to protect the network's value and its integrity. Think about it.
Yeah.
In a model where mining is social and easy, the biggest risk is fake accounts. bot farms, people making multiple accounts to game the system. Those fake accounts inflate the user numbers and dilute the value for everyone who's a genuine participant. So that 20% penalty, it acts as a really strong message, a deterrent against anyone trying to cheat the system by farming tokens with fake identities.
Yeah.
It reinforces their commitment to knowing who their users are, which builds a much more secure and trustworthy foundation for when V23 and its smart contracts actually go live. You just can't run a global financial system with anonymous accounts everywhere. The KYC and that heavy penalty are there to enforce legitimacy.
Ah, okay. That connects the dots then. The super easy entry with mobile mining and the super strict identity verification, they're like two sides of the same coin. They need to be sure the millions of pioneers are real people before they hand over the keys to things like decentralized exchanges.
Precisely. So if we pull everything together from the sources, what we see is a project trucked to scale up in two major ways at the same time. Geographically, reaching this incredible global footprint across 200 countries, and technologically, getting ready to launch these complex V23 features, smart contracts, DeFi tools. That combination positions Pi as, well, a potential player in global financial inclusion and maybe even Web3 development. And it's a big but, only if they can successfully manage this tricky transition from dead simple clicking to complex DeFi.
So what's the takeaway for you listening in? You've basically heard the story of a project that started with the absolute lowest barrier to entry in crypto, just tapping a button daily. And now it's gearing up to deploy advanced tools like DEXs and AMMs to this massive global community, potentially 200 countries strong, all while enforcing this unique kind of strict 20% penalty for identity issues.
Yeah, this deep dive really throws that tension into sharp relief, doesn't it? The challenge of actually democratizing finance. If Pi Network somehow pulls this off, if they manage the leap from press-a-button simplicity to fully working smart contracts and DeFi tools usable by that huge, likely non-technical global user base, well, it would prove that even complex tech can be delivered through extreme user-friendliness.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If this model works, prioritizing radical simplicity on the front end while enforcing strict identity verification on the back end, could it force other blockchain projects, the really technical ones? Could it force them to seriously rethink their own user experience, their own barriers to entry? Could it accelerate a move towards truly global, truly accessible Web3 adoption that isn't just for the tech savvy? That's the fascinating question we'll leave you with today.